conversation at the table, but the show is going to continue. So if I get your attention. All right, thank you. Well, our next speaker is the President and CEO of NorthWestern Energy, Bob Rowe. Bob has a 20-plus years of energy and utility industry experience. He served as chairman of Western Energy Institute and is co-chair of IRR, an institute of the Edison Foundation, focused on advancing the adoption of innovative and efficient technologies among grid electric utilities and their technology partners that will transform the power grid. Now notice this, Bob served as the chairman and commissioner of the Montana Public Service Commission from 1993 to 2004, and he served as president of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. Montana truly has an all-of-the-above energy portfolio, and I saw that first week as we were doing our 10-city tour across Montana. We finished that tour in Butte, and Bob took me in to NorthWestern's Energy Transmission Control Center. That's the closest you get to NORAD if you are looking at the grid. And what we saw in this very, very secure room was 20-foot tall situational awareness displays that literally wrapped around this very, very large room. And you saw the entire grid for Montana. On the southeast corner of that, you saw a coal strip, and up in the northwest corner, you were seeing Thompson Falls. It was fascinating. If you remember what happened during those large rolling outages we had decades ago, where we lost power across much of the U.S., I think it was a 4th of July holiday weekend, if I remember. One of the things they learned from that was the importance of having situational awareness for the control technicians, to have it all displayed up in kind of the big picture versus sometimes locked into monitors. And it's just fascinating to see these best practices and really world-class. Every 4 seconds, they rebalance on that grid. So when it comes to renewable state and federal policy, also, Bob will tell you that hydro should be listed as a renewable resource. And hopefully we'll get this energy bill passed in the Senate and actually define hydro as renewable energy. So here to discuss that, please welcome Bob Rowe.
First, thanks very much to all of the sponsors for this extraordinary event, and Senator Daines, who I cannot see. Thank you in particular. You did a great job setting the table this morning. I think we all enjoyed hearing about your extraordinary windshield tour of Montana's diverse geography, culture, and certainly its diverse energy assets. We appreciated you spending really an entire day with us last week, first up at Hebgen Dam. The crew up there had a fantastic time. I was jealous because you got to see the great historic schoolhouse that the crew up there has been restoring. And then in the afternoon, as you said, you came down to the Grid Operations Center in Butte. Our grid director, Casey Johnston, went through a very detailed PowerPoint. You got to meet all the IBEW operators out in the control room. And as you've probably got the idea, the Grid Control Center is really nerd heaven, and it's high-stress nerd heaven. And Senator, I have to say, you seem pretty much at home in nerd heaven, and that's a good thing. A couple things I'd like to do. I am going to ask you to take out your phones in just a minute, and we'll ask you a couple of questions, but you might want to get them out right now. And I'm going to be asking you to text to MT Energy, or text the word MT Energy to the number 22333, 22333, and texting the word MT Energy. So before we launch into that, give some thought to 2 of the questions I'm going to ask you. All of you have some kind of a relationship with NorthWestern Energy. Maybe you're a retail customer, electric or gas. Maybe you're a transmission customer, electric or gas. Maybe you depend on us to provide electricity to you as possibly at a refinery as a co-op member. Maybe you depend on us to help you export out of the state to meet your own needs. So I think of a word or two to describe how you think about NorthWestern Energy right now. It's okay if the word or two is the CEO is a bozo, that's fine. But then also think about a word or two to describe what you would like to see our role at NorthWestern Energy be 10 years from now. And that's a question I've been asking lots of folks recently, and it's a question we think an awful lot about ourselves internally. And again, each of you does have probably a different view of what that would be. A couple of things I'd like to do first. There are a lot of people from NorthWestern here, including many of our great company leaders. If the folks from NorthWestern could just please stand up so we can recognize you and say thank you. And I get to, I love going to work almost every day because I work with smart, dedicated people all across the company, every town we serve, every job, and we do something that is just fundamentally important. And you saw that with John Hines. You also figured out hearing John, and you'll realize this again when you hear from Kurt and Mike. I work with an awful lot of people who are way smarter than me. I want to also just give a quick shout out to two other folks who don't work for NorthWestern, but who you'll be hearing from over the next couple of days. And these are two people I count as friends, colleagues, and both people I learn a lot from. One, Dave Gooden, is the CEO of MDU Resource Group. He'll be speaking tomorrow. We're a pure utility at NorthWestern. We've worked hard to get there. Dave leads a company that is very successfully diversified. In fact, one of MDU's affiliates is one of our prime contractors as we invest in our infrastructure, particularly in Montana. And Dave and his company at MDU on the utility side are also partners with us, certainly here in Montana, also in South Dakota, where along with Otter Tail, we, MDU and Otter Tail, have just successfully completed a major environmental project at what is South Dakota's key coal plant. It's been an important project and one that really we all pulled together, and the state of South Dakota pulled together to get done. The other good friend and colleague who's here today, Dennis Vermillion, I saw you somewhere. Dennis. And Dennis is the president of Avista Utilities. One of the great things in the utility industry is we have partnerships. We share practices, we support one another when we're in trouble. We spend a lot of time talking to the folks at Avista about things such as, well, number one, employee safety, grid modernization. We partner within the Pacific Northwest on our energy efficiency strategies. Our employees, linemen and engineers, drove over the hill to Avista's home area in Spokane to help after the great big storm in Thanksgiving week. Another thing, and I know Dennis will get to talk about this tomorrow, is Avista is also a major investor in Montana. They actually own exactly the same amount of coal strip as do we, and they have they're the proud builders of the Noxon Dam on the Clark Fork River. And if you haven't had the pleasure to spend time up in that wonderful part of Montana, you really have to do so. And you will see that those dams, Thompson Falls, Noxon, generate very, very highly reliable power, but they're also real amenities and sources of economic development and strength for that region as a result. When we were in the process of acquiring the Montana hydro system 2 years ago, actually I talked to the CEO of Avista, Scott Morris, and others at Avista, and Scott in particular shared with me the vision and the risk that Avista's leaders at that time, Washington Water Power, took in 1955 when they decided to build the dam at Noxon. That was a big, big undertaking for a company of their size at that time. They knew it was the right thing to do. They moved ahead. They made the decision. And ask Dennis tomorrow, but I doubt that there is anyone who is served by that, again, carbon-free, high reliable power that doesn't thank the leadership, far-sighted leadership back in 1955 for making that decision. And that was one of the things we thought about a lot when we decided to make the commitment to acquiring the hydro system in Montana for our customers. So again, thank you and congratulations for your leadership there. Well, moving into just a couple of slides, what you have in front of you here is a map of our whole service territory. And if you just look at the Montana piece, you'll see those solid lines that reflect both our gas transmission system and our electric transmission system. And as you see, those are really distributed around the state of Montana. They are key assets primarily, but far from exclusively, for our retail customers. Here's another map of our Montana gas operations. One of the opportunities we have, and there certainly is interest in this, is figure out if there are ways to build out our gas distribution system to serve more communities where we already provide electricity. Something we've been able to do very, very successfully over the decades in South Dakota. Kurt Pohl, who you'll meet a little bit later, was a leader in doing that. It's a tremendous contributor to local economic vitality if we can do that. And a map of our electric system. Here you can't see all the literally tens of thousands of miles of distribution and transmission, but again, the point is, this is together, gas and electric, the critical energy infrastructure that serves very much of Montana. Okay, phones out. I have 3 questions here already, and as you see, text MT Energy to 2233. Ready? So let's get started. First question, some things. What are they worth to you in our everyday lives if we need, we need some things more than other? So what are you willing to pay, or what would you be willing to pay more than $2 for if you really, really needed it? What would you be willing to pay more than $2 for in that emergency? A cup of coffee before an important meeting. You need that Starbucks caffeine rush before you go in to tell the boss that the project's late or over budget, or do that presentation to the board of directors or the Chamber of Commerce. So would you pay more than $2 for the cup of coffee? Which, by the way, is cheap these days. Second, an outlet. You're at the airport, your phone, your lifeline to the world, is about to die. Your flight's an hour away, you've got a lot of work to do. What would you pay for that outlet for 1 hour to be able to recharge your phone? Over $2? Okay. C, an umbrella during a downpour. That's kind of a coastal question, I think. Okay. D, all of the above. Okay. You see the answers there, so I think this group is reflective of what a friend of mine who does some interesting survey work did, trying to connect the difference between, the relationship between value, how we value different goods and services on the one hand, and what they actually cost us on the other. Her name is Mai Shibata, and the survey that she did turned out most folks were willing to pay about 6 times the cost for a cup of coffee. So that's how they perceive that cup of coffee. An umbrella, they'd pay about 1.5 times the cost of an umbrella in that high value situation. But boy, if they wanted to charge the phone at the airport, they were willing to pay actually over $15 for that hour of electricity. And where she lives, she did the math, and that turned out to be about 25,000 times the cost. So an extraordinary divergence between the cost of that particular service on the one hand and the value. All of you have some touch on the energy sector one way or another, and I think you understand that tremendous value that we all provide. And by the way, that's very much true of folks who are in public service, either passing or implementing the rules that really do set the table, as a number of speakers have said already, for how we do our job meeting the essential infrastructure and service needs for our customers. So we all provide, you all help provide a very, very valuable service. We've been successful because it's taken for granted, but that's a good thing. And you also heard, again from the senator, how important it is to build out in the rest of the world from an economic perspective, a public health perspective, to make the same level of service available in places where now it is not. Okay, next question, if we can move on. One or two words to best describe NorthWestern Energy right now. And again, you don't have to be nice. I won't hurt my feelings. Sarah's got a friend. Reliable, that's good. Got to find out about Sarah. So we've got good words, bad words, irrelevant, expensive, good power. Sarah's getting more votes. Community, Montanan. Okay, I think that's bullies, conservative, expensive, okay, let's move on from there. And I think that makes the point that Sarah's pretty popular. But that does make the point that everyone has views and expectations, and one of our challenges is to try to navigate through that, hopefully talk to our customers and stakeholders as much as we can and try to explain what we're doing, but also hear what we should be doing. Let's move to the second question. What would you like to see NorthWestern be in 10 years? Again, just one or two words. What, as a utility, as a service provider that has some relationship with you, what would you like to see us be? Well, not Sarah. This isn't the, obviously the best way to do this is in more of a conversation, but we've been having these discussions internally. This is something we do think about, and I ask our employees and our leaders, what do you want our legacy to be? But we also do talk about that externally, and this is helpful. It's interesting, the breakout is a little bit different here. Sustainable, cheaper, gas, successful, efficient, reliable, new hydro, affordable, consistent, not Sarah, Montana energy, burning Montana coal, renewable leader, competitive, independent, clean energy, innovative, sustainable, low cost, coal-fired, there, not bullies, prosperous, reliable, steady, progressive, sustainable, inexpensive, a leader, coal, environmentally friendly, renewable, still here, and reliable. So, and that would change, and affordable then coming up again. So that's an example of how this room, which certainly is united by an interest in energy, still has pretty significantly different views. One of the things we like to do, again, is try whenever we can to work with our customers and communities to figure out what we can do collectively that makes sense and helps us move forward. I'm going to say just a couple of words about some key parts of our system. Again, Senator Daines did a great job describing his time at the Grid Control Center last week. There, we're back up now. Okay, good. Well, first what I'll point out is this is our vision and mission. This is in our new office in Butte. And the way our employees define our vision is enriching lives through a safe, sustainable energy future, and our mission working together to deliver safe, reliable, and innovative energy solutions. And we emphasize to customers and to communities. This is the map of our balancing authority, the area where we are responsible for maintaining the stability of the grid. Senator Daines visited the grid center last week. And again, you see how we sit at this great place in the continent, potentially with access in multiple directions, but at the same time, also very challenged in terms of being able to transact and move power in and out of this region. This gives you an idea of the diversity of parties that do use and depend on our transmission system. And this is a snapshot at a peak moment in June of 2015, June 29th. The red is our total retail load. PTP means point-to-point wheeling, parties moving power out off our system. Colstrip partners, the other owners at Colstrip, the light blue, it's a large piece of it. The rural co-op load, the small green, and then the purple is about 350 megawatts of industrial customers who, as you heard, obtain their power on their own. John talked a bit about the supply portfolio that serves our own customers. Here's a snapshot of that. And you can think of it either in terms of nameplate capacity or delivered capacity. By nameplate capacity, we are in Montana almost 70% carbon free. That's actually pretty extraordinary. By delivered capacity, we are almost 60% carbon free. Again, that's remarkable. And you compare that to the goal that Governor Brown, who came up earlier, has set for California of being basically 50% carbon free. So we think we're in a good place. John described the resource mix that we have. We always start with an emphasis on cost-effective energy efficiency where that's available. But between energy efficiency and renewables, excluding the hydro system, over the past few years, we've spent over $1.3 billion. That's a big commitment, again, to both efficiency and to renewables. And then obviously, acquiring the hydro system and dedicating that to serve our customers was our biggest commitment over the last few years. John also mentioned the characteristics of the hydro system. We've got 222 megawatts at Colstrip, about 94% reliability at Colstrip, or availability, I should say. We've got almost exactly twice the existing hydro capacity as we receive power from Colstrip 4, about 442 megawatts. Add to that that there's about 84 megawatts of hydro at the existing run-of-the-river Montana dams that, if it made sense, could be developed. Talked a lot about Colstrip already, and again, we are one of the owners there. It is a valuable resource to us. It's a valuable resource not just for power, but in terms of the stability that it provides on the transmission system, and it's a key resource in serving the 350 megawatts of industrial load in Montana that takes power from the market. This is actually the slide that John put up, or this slide describes the situation John described on a peak event around Thanksgiving. And it demonstrates the value of a diverse portfolio. And this is fairly typical at peak. So we have actually a little bit more wind on our system, and wind is a good resource as part of our portfolio, than we do coal from Colstrip. As Senator mentioned, wind tends not to blow in high pressure. So during that event, our energy resources were coming, and what this shows on each day at the peak hour, the relationship between the nameplate capacity and the power produced. Hydro system was doing its job, and actually hydro provided most of our electricity needs during that period, but we were able to call on Colstrip 4 at 99%. Wind, again, doesn't have characteristics that are as attractive by itself at peak. So you wouldn't want to depend on any one resource, and we like the fact that we are as diverse as we are. Carbon is obviously an issue. What we highlight here is that, again, thanks to the hydro system, I'm not sure I have a pointer on this, well, this wouldn't do much good anyway, but The red line is, if you can see over here, that's the EPA target for Montana, trailing down, and this is in the final rule, trailing down to the final target in 2030. And this is the final rule. And the Attorney General spoke to this, and the change from the proposed rule, this is the proposed rule, more of a glide path, and the final rule, this turns into a cliff. This is a concern, I think, to policymakers across the political spectrum in Montana. This is what NorthWestern Energy's Montana portfolio looks like. As a result of the hydro system coming on, the carbon intensity of our portfolio, and if you're a retail customer of ours, the resources that serve you, is actually lower than the EPA's target for Montana in 2030. That's an extraordinary thing, and something I think we can all feel very good about. As John mentioned, and Commissioner Kavula mentioned, we'll be filing our next Montana electric supply plan in the next several days. That plan includes a range of scenarios. We refer to the economically optimal scenario, not the preferred scenario, recognizing that there has to be discussion about an ultimate course. But under any scenario, our carbon intensity will continue gradually to decrease over time. One of the things I've challenged our supply planners to do actually is think about not just different resource mixes, so-called, looking at individual kinds of resources and then modeling how they work together under different scenarios, but also looking at maybe targets. What's your reliability target? What's your carbon target? What are the impacts on price? And figuring out the most cost-effective way to achieve long-term goals for our customers. A little bit different way of looking at things, but this is an important plan. It's the first plan since we have moved to being more of an integrated utility as opposed to, as we were coming out of supply deregulation, completely dependent on the market. I think John did a nice job covering the supply plan, so what I would like to do is make just a couple of comments in closing, and then hopefully there will be some questions, and maybe somebody can tell me who Sarah is. But we've talked a lot about supply. We are also a network and service provider, and our planners just do a fantastic job, both transmission and distribution. These are very, very detailed areas. One of the things I've been excited about doing over the last few months, we've convened two stakeholder groups. One, our infrastructure stakeholder group, really remarkably chaired by Chancellor Blackketter, who has made a huge commitment of his personal time to help lead this group. Very diverse group of stakeholders, helping us do long-range planning for transmission, distribution, substations, gas and electric both. And they just met most recently on Friday. Within 30 minutes, the Chancellor had sent out a memo to all of us. These are key takeaways. These are things the stakeholder group wants to look at. These are action items. The other group we've asked, and this is the Community Sustainable Energy Work Group. We've invited folks in with sustainability orientation, folks from some of the advocacy groups, to help us design a set of pilot projects to understand, in particular, how more distributed resources, solar storage and other, might interact on our network. My goal, personally, would be to be able to provide reliable, safe, adequate, affordable, and increasingly clean power to all of our customers, but also for customers who have particular needs and particular desires they want to achieve, to be able to partner with them to meet those needs as well. One of the things this stakeholder group helped us do was put together kind of a set of principles to guide the pilots, and I think that's a nice place for us to start as we think about our work. So the words that I would leave you with, and these are the words that I certainly think about at NorthWestern, and I believe most folks across the company do: sustainability, and that's not just environmental sustainability, but the ability to meet needs today and be present, be strong, be able to meet the needs of the communities that we serve years into the future. Stewardship, and that is stewardship of the environment. It's an important part of what we do, but also very definitely stewardship of the infrastructure and service that is essential to the state of Montana. Partnership, we've talked a lot about that, but I value the opportunity to have partnerships, and again, where we can partner with people. We may not agree on everything, but find opportunities to work together. That's incredibly exciting. And then finally, investment. That certainly is a theme of this conference. Our investment in the basic infrastructure that serves us is critical. We provide enabling infrastructure to much of Montana. That's something that we are committed to doing. So sustainability, stewardship, partnership, and investment are four words that I think are helpful for us to keep in mind. Ultimately, all of that focused on doing the best job that we can do for our customers. With that, if we can take just one or two questions. I think there are microphones, and since I can't see anybody, if you could tell me who you are. Anyone? Well, Senator, I'm getting off easy, it would appear. Oh, great.
I noticed that you have several different kinds of meters that are for NorthWestern Energy customers. You have GE meters, Itron meters, different kinds. They're all different ages, and my understanding is that they're read by a truck that goes through once a month, and but they're not smart meters though. So I'm curious to know what type of granularity of the energy use information do you collect once a month? Is it broken down by by times of use, to show peak times and so on?
We've actually, I'm going to answer the question a little bit more broadly than that, and maybe say a bit about what we're thinking about evolution of meters. There are various generations of meters. The traditional manual meters, somebody actually goes up and reads every month. We actually still have those in some areas. The next generation is AMR, and that's what actually Montana Power spent, as you said, spent on in Montana some years ago. Those meters are actually still working relatively well. Those are read, as you said, from the truck going down the street, and they provide basic information. That's where we are currently in metering in Montana. AMI is an advanced metering infrastructure that is key for smart meter deployment, and we continue to look at that and ask what the value proposition is. We do that in two ways. First of all, what the value is in that investment as opposed to line clearance and pole replacement, and that was one of the things we looked at as part of our distribution system infrastructure plan. And then we look at it separately in terms of what's the functionality that the smart meters will provide, and when does it make sense to deploy that. So our planners are actually looking at business cases now to ask whether or not, or how soon it makes sense to do that. A meter change out is expensive, and particularly when you haven't fully depreciated the system. We participated actually along with Avista in the regional smart grid pilot. What we were able to do there was actually through a combination of WiMAX and pretty sophisticated operation of the existing meters, get a lot of the functionality of smart meters, and that could be another path to go. So metering is on our agenda. My sense is probably there are things that are in Montana that are higher value earlier than a complete meter changeout. And your description of the functionality of the meter as we use it currently is about right, but what we saw in the Helena pilot is we can actually, if there's a reason to serve our customers, we can increase the functionality. Then I think lots of folks are aware there are many smart meters deployed all around the country. That creates challenges in terms of figuring out what you do with the data, how are you using the data effectively, also created some real concerns about privacy and protecting customers. So good question. Stop. I will stop. Thank you all very much. Oh. Senator, if I could, we just released our Community Works report. It is hot off the presses. This is one of my favorite documents we put out every year. It is back at our table in the back of the room, so please do pick one up. Thank you.
Well, here's the moment you've all been waiting for. Where are oil and gas prices headed? So we've got Porter Bennett is going to present next to us. He's bringing his crystal ball and his projections here, what's going to happen in petroleum markets. Porter is the founder, president, and CEO of Ponderosa Advisors, an advisory firm for the energy, ag, and water sectors that includes subsidiaries Ponderosa Energy as well as Water Sage. So Porter's going to share his thoughts with us today on the future of the oil and gas markets and his perspective on the future of America's energy industry with respect to global markets. Porter served as vice president of the Western Energy Alliance and as chairman of its Natural Gas Committee. He's also been an observer with the Potential Gas Committee. He's participated on the coordinating subcommittee of the recent National Petroleum Council Natural Gas Study and is a member of the International Gas Union Strategy Committee. Please give a warm welcome to Porter Bennett.